Robinson, yeah, when I first came, I used to call myself Robinson Crusoe, but then I changed it to Robinson Not Quite Crucified, you know, Robinson Crucified, and now Not Quite Crucified, because there's no way I'm crucified, as you can see.
Don Lowe, I met long before I met Leonard. I remember one of the first meetings was in his house in Kamini, and he loved poetry, so he used to read poetry all night. He read his own poetry. I thought it was his own, and then of course all the English masters. I would say that Don is the most dear friend I have on Hydra, and he's still there. And that's why it's such a pleasure to come back there. I have a picture of us, and I think this picture is way, way back because I remember I had torn my jeans on the knee, and then a friend of mine had embroidered a beautiful bag for me, and I had to separate the bag in two pieces, and I used it to patch up my blue jeans when I was photographed with Don. I don't remember years, so I have no idea. It must have been after I met my last husband. Yes. I think Jan was with me that summer when we met. Yeah.
I see. And in what way do you think Don Love has had an influence on this small island?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves him, and he's a dear friend, and he's friends with everybody. And I think they're quite impressed with the way he lives and the way he manages. Yeah. As I said, Don was a lover of poetry. He really was. And his dearest and closest friends in those days was Anthony Kingsmill, and he loved poetry too. But somehow I got to know Don better later. I would say that when I came back the second time, I was in contact with him again. But I have admired him for all those years. I really have admired him because he's the only one that in some way has used Ydra. And he hasn't come to Ydra with his English or American or Canadian or Norwegian habits and culture. He's melted in. He's very accepted among the locals. He has lots of friends. And he's built all his houses with his own hands. And in this year of 2016, it's hard to imagine, but he has no running water and he has no electricity. You just wait till you see his house. I love it. I think if he ever leaves that house, it should be kept as a museum. And he's written a lot of books. A lot of books. And somehow Don will probably be famous when he's not here anymore.
I'm on my way looking for Don's house, so we'll see. So you have built all this by yourself?
But I did everything in this house out of junk, which I found. I always used to come up the hill carrying something, a piece of wood or whatever I needed. I've got to repair that window next this September. I've just got an old window which I found. And the photographs are all taken by other people who have given me, some of them are quite well known people. Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are tuned, the cotton is high, and young daddy is real. Your ma, she's good looking, Buzz, little babe. Yes, I made everything. Everything has been found. There's nothing from the supermarkets and the big stores in the cities. It's all done without money too. These are just the last few books I've done, which I'm using at the moment for this one. That's one I did this winter, which is a lovely title. Look at the title. And that's the one you saw, the olive picker. And there's the one on Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk. That's a film scenario, all waiting to be filmed. Well, you can see. This is the book waiting to be written, which is going to be called Angels and Fishes. Nice title, that.
Nice.
And I found that painting in the rubbish, so I've been using it for a cover and the story. And you can see pictures of Don when he was younger and the kids. Yeah, I'm going to read from this latest book I'm doing, the title of which, I keep repeating this title because I think it's a great title. A title of which is Looking Back, Forward and Sideways, Down Under and Up Above, on turning 80 on a Greek island. And you see, it's not in any order. It's not. I just wrote it as everything fell into place. Whatever came into my head and whatever it came. But amazingly, it does tie up. After you read the whole book, you will see how it ties up in a very natural way. It all started with a dream. I was on a trip through the Greek islands, and someone gave me a large, beautifully decorated silver coin. I held it in my hand and up to the magic light, and the shining coin appeared to represent the gift of a new life, of creation, producing energy and peaceful endeavour. And I saw what all money could buy if only man and woman could learn how to really profit from life. So begins one American woman's reason for abandoning her native country and heading for Greece to live, where, single-handed and with little financial resources, she started a woman's workshop on the spirituality and natural beauty evident in life, once one realizes the earth and all in, on and around it is holy. Paradise, she says, is here and now. But human balance is essential, she goes on. Mind and body has to come together. Drawing, painting, writing, poetry, clay work, sculpture, dancing, yoga, an active imagination, sitting still and dream interpretation, looking at ancient and modern myths referring to all mankind, experimental work, doing something physical besides talking, all are part of the new experience now, the life most have lost in our Western world. It is essential to get back to nature, she says, with no uncertain emphasis, to let go of the consumer society and the false values placed on things, and to use whatever profit one has attained in life to enhance the reality of being again. When I left school, they wrote in my end of school book, I was a bit of a rebel at school, although I was very popular and like a top boy in a way, but I would never acknowledge that. I was always acknowledge the boys at the bottom, you see. I was closer to them. And so they thought I was wasting my life, I suppose, by mixing with a lower grade rather than, being a Stoltenberg. And so he wrote in my book something, and the man who wrote it I respected. He was an English teacher. Bill Williams was his name, I've never forgotten it. And he wrote in my book, Donald needs to find his place in life. Can you imagine saying this to a young man, young guy going out into the world? A sensitive person. It would upset his whole life because we would feel like he didn't fit in anywhere. So I went round the world twice looking for my place in life. I had no money, of course. I didn't feel England as my place. No, it was my birthplace, but I didn't feel that. So I didn't have money, so I had to take jobs wherever I could find them to travel, to be ordered to travel. I became a sailor for a start, and I did jobs. I drilled for oil in the desert, at one point, to get some money to come and write my first book here. And worked with the Texans and the Canadians and the hardest guys you ever met, but I survived all that. And when I came to Greece, of course, I did meet the woman who was the mother of my son, my firstborn son. She waited here for me while I finished my tour of the desert. So when we came back, and our aim was to find, I don't know whether I mentioned this to you yesterday, my aim was to find a Greek island where, as she put it, we can sing in the sunshine and laugh every day. But then she got pregnant, and for some reason that meant we have to abandon all our dreams, you see, because we're having a baby, and the baby comes first and we must put him through the machine. And so I said, well, let's think about that, And I went back to finish my job in the desert, and I said, how come you put this pressure on a little baby to change your life? We put the baby on my back and we do whatever, we go dance and sing and whatever. I was fit and strong, as you pictures. I wasn't Robinson, not quite crucified then. I was on top of the world. But she couldn't get it, and she wanted to take the baby, 8 months old, to America. She was American. She was a good woman. I'm not criticizing her. She was very capable. She was an ex-police officer, actually. I just thought of that. And she kept promising to come back. I went ahead and found the island, which was Hydra. Found the house, which was last occupied by Edith Piaf. And it was all run down and falling apart, right by the sea down in Kamini. Still there. No one's lived in it since I left it, can you imagine? And fixed it up, but there was no electricity or running water. And to get the running water in those days, we used to have to go over the hill with all the old ladies of 90 and 95, drop the bucket down the well, very deep well. And then I'd pull up all the buckets for the old ladies as well, and beautiful water, and carry it back. And as I came back, I would hear a lady in a nearby house playing the harp, and the beauty all around. And of course it was, you can live like that. And never wasted any water. I don't waste anything anyway, but never wasted any water. Water's precious. And when she found out, the mother of my son, that there was no running, she made that the big excuse for not returning. I remember her saying, because she kept delaying, a year had passed, can't you write and have running water, you see? And then the Greeks were not so mature, she made excuses. Why, if you want to see your son, you have to come to America. Now, I was struck with a big decision there. And you imagine, he meant everything to me. He gave me the light, as they say,
In the days when LSD was legal, and Jim and I had a few acid trips together, and because it was there, and if it was there, we wanted to know what it was. and at the same time, poets, and I think this is true for Jim as well, poets like De Quincey, Baudelaire, and even Edgar Allan Poe all took drugs to expand their consciousness. And when LSD was still legal, there wasn't a sense of doing something bad, you see. Did you have another question?
Yes.
While I'm looking.
What do you think is beneficial with living this kind of life here on Hydra?
Well, I think I probably would agree with my friend Don Lowe that being away from the challenges of urban reality, one becomes more self-reliant and is able to go deeper, perhaps, if that's their interest, into their own psyche, and also explore their art form or whatever in a much more conducive reality. It's very simple here, and you have fresh air, you have the sea, you have the sky, you have nature, which is unaffected by the automobile, for example. And that begins to sink in. It takes time, but it's quite lovely.
Yeah, and what kind of new perspectives can you gain by living here also?
Well, I think one doesn't necessarily get new perspectives, but one's perspectives deepen, and they're challenged by this reality. I mean, I've always been, for example, a pacifist. You know, I've always admired art. It's not that I'm discovering more, it's that when you take away that which is unnecessary, you see more clearly. You appreciate more deeply the wonderful luxury of living in a beautiful environment, which is not inundated with what most cities are inundated with: noise, pollution, heavy traffic, stress. When I went to London the last time, I thought I was visiting Dante's Inferno, you know, especially in the tube. You know, you descend underground like Dante's Inferno. You see people madly rushing to someplace, and they all look worried and frustrated, and, you know, and they look at you, and they know you're not a traveler. You know, you're not familiar with the tube. They know you're a stranger. It's very strange. And they look at you like, what are you doing here? You know, you don't belong here. And that was an eye-opener, you know. I remember there was a pretty young lady sitting opposite me, and I, you know, broke the ice and said hello. And, you know, she said, oh, hi, and blah, blah, blah. And she was a cellist. I said, look, do you have a pen I can borrow? And I need to write something down. I was writing a report on an art fair I'd been to. She said, oh, yes, here, take it by all means. Before I had a chance to return it, she, you know, left the tube, and it was a strange, lovely kind of encounter. You know, maybe it didn't mean anything, but it was sort of a poetic gesture. And there's a lot of that on Hydra if you're open to it. You know, you live in your own time continuum here. So, you know, when you have that luxury, you're bound to become more enhanced, I would say, by your own personality. which is probably what most people want, to know themselves.
I like it primitive up here, you know. I like having the ruins around me. No neighbours, no immediate neighbours. So a real Englishman would clean it all up nicely, but I don't want to clean it up nicely. Oh, but this is a baby, you see. And this little shack was my junk room, and I made it for when we get another Robinson not quite crucified. He can come and stay in. Dun dun dun.
Oh. Oh.
Even got a teddy bear. It's from the seat. You see, this is my workshop, a little bit.
So what do you make here?
Well, if I have to do jobs, because sometimes I have to do some work, fix things. Here you can make a cup of tea. Out here it's very hot. I'll take you out. We won't go on the terrace, but there's terraces out here too. It's very hot out here. You see? And I have terraces there.
Oh.
You can sit under the almond tree. And you have a nice view from everything. Summertime. And the living's easy. Fish are tuned. Cotton is high. And young daddy is real. Your ma, she's good looking. Don't you cry, Michael.
Well, it's your song, man.
One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up and sing and sing and sing and sing and sing. You'll spread your wings
And you'll take to the sky.
up to that morning. There ain't nothing's gonna harm you. Mommy and Daddy standing by. Pretty,
Not bad. Rehearsal.
So, Don.
So, Dan.
Yeah.
What is interesting about Dan is that he has lived on this island for 52 years and he has found everything he owns at the beach or elsewhere. How come money doesn't mean much to him, do you think?
I have no idea. But you know, when he got to the island some 53 years ago, whatever it is, he'd been working at oil rigs in the Middle East. So he had a lot of money. And then he came and he just stayed. He's a sort of an enigma. Last man standing, you know.
Well, he was around the world. He went around the world a few times.
Yeah, that's what he said. I'm not so sure about that. I think he worked in oil rigs for some time and then just got off the island here in 63 or 64, I can't remember. And I think he's been off the island twice, against his will, apparently.
Oh.
What
was Anthony Kingsmill, I think, that brought him to the island?
Was it not?
Yeah,
you
the
might be
artist.
right. Might be right about that.
He found him in Athens, living
On the streets
underneath
of Athens?
on the streets. he found him living in like an artist community near the Parthenon in Plakos. Yeah.
Right.
And Keynesville said, "You must come to the island." And he came, and you know, Don's written about it in a few books. Kinney and I.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's written, I don't know, 100 books perhaps.
Yeah, a lot of books.
A lot of books.
Well, he rewrote Kinney and I this winter. That's why I know, because
Right.
I've just reread it myself.
Right. Well, of course, these are the facts.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think he is an enigma, but a good one.
It's like that song, isn't it? That Leonard Cohen song.
Yeah.
I came so far for beauty. I left so much behind.
Yeah.
My patience, my family, my masterpiece unsigned.
But Don had two families here.
We had 3, I think.
3? Maybe so.
But I think if there's a moral to the Don story, it's that it takes an extreme amount of sacrifice to still be able to live the dream.
Yeah, well, you know what's wonderful about Don is he's cheerful. He's a happy man. You know.
He's a happy camper.
Well, that's my impression. Don't you think he's a happy person?
Not necessarily all the time, but then again, who is? I don't know. That's where the enigma part comes in.
He's here in the winter. We're here pretty much alone, and you know, by swimming is his ritual that keeps him in good shape. That keeps him happy, and
Keeps
the
us
work.
all in good shape.
The work, his work gives him a great deal of satisfaction.
Right. Of course, yeah. And of course, he's extremely political and a lefty.
Well,
Do you know that?
I don't know about lefty. You know, he probably believes we'd all be a lot happier if we didn't have to worry about money.
And if we didn't have, America,
Well,
the world would be, just this fantastic place.
There's been and there are a lot of celebrities on Hydra. In what way have they had an influence on this island?
well, actually, probably they've had a good influence. You know, I had the opportunity of meeting Leonard Cohen, and you know, at the beach where we usually swim. And he was meditating on one side, I was meditating on the other side. You know, it's ridiculous. I'll go over and introduce myself, you know. So I did, and we had a nice conversation. And then he gave me advice. He said, you know, you should get married. It's a very good experience. And I said, are you still writing? He says, yes, I play around a little bit. You know, it's interesting. Well, by the way, I'm having an exhibit. Would you like to come? He said, oh, yeah, I'll come. That'd be great. So he came to the exhibit, and we were both wearing the same outfit, which I thought was very funny. And it was nice. He was very gracious, and I think that's something that I've been fortunate to experience, which is that I've met a lot of celebrities in my voyage through time, and most of them are fairly gracious and open. You know, they just get right to it. And on Hydra, that happens as well.
Would you say that it's sort of a democracy here with you and the others?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. You know, it's as an artist who lives on Hydra once said, it's a microcosm of the world. So people still have their egos, and they still have their sense of importance. But I think because one walks everywhere, one is not protected by a car or by, you know, bodyguards or whatever, however it goes these days, that one has more opportunity, especially if they're gracious, to, you know, get to know other celebrities. You know, and sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, I've been on the island 22 years, And it's only within the last 3 or 4 years that Don, Lowe, and I have become good friends. You know, it took a long time for the absorption to occur, you know, a very long time. But it's very deep. You know, I've read many of his books. We've talked endlessly about various things, and you know, it's quite it's an important relationship because it's between two artists. So, you know, his central theme is that the world really can't offer him anything because he's a self-realized person and he's really fulfilling his own soul by writing, you know. I, on the other hand, am a little more disposed to, you know, getting my work out into the world. And but I think his position is much purer.
Yeah, but you know, I didn't mix with Leonard so much. I was the last of his fans. I am a fan of Leonard because I think he's a great poet and a great, you know, writer. It's obvious. And I know Leonard well. We respect each other. I know we're brothers in a way, you know. But I wasn't a big fan of his because I lived my own way. I ran out of money after 7 years, so I survived by jumping in the sea and catching fish and octopus, just like Tarzan, you know, if you like. That's what there's something. And in the middle of winter, I swam every day. And while all this is going on, I'm writing books, you know, trying to express it in writing as well. I used to do odd jobs to earn a bit of money, and sometimes Marianne would have me around fixing something in the house, you know, while she was waiting for Leonard. And I remember Axel was a little boy, and I remember him saying, I was fixing something in the house one day, and he's, you know, a little boy, a lovely little guy, you know, before he had his problems. And he just looked up from the floor and he said to Marianne, "Why don't you marry Don?" he said. Well, I had a Greek wife by then, but I wasn't with her. She had left me and took my daughter to Athens to be educated at a fine school. She was a well-to-do Greek lady. And then Marianne said to her, Axel, "Oh, Don has got a wife, you know." And she had her eye on Jean-Marc anyway, my neighbour up there, you know.
Talked about the Greeks sitting around this table, the policeman, the fisherman.
Ah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very...
No, when first came to, years ago, when you first come to an island, you get off the boat, any island, and the first table on the porch you see is the chief of police, the doctor, the mayor, and the fisherman, and they're just talking about everything and what's going on in the world and their lives and everything, watching all the girls go by, of course, as well. You know, this is real beautiful, you know. They don't say, "I'm the chief of police, you know, I know more than you." It's democracy. And if you've got the money, you pay for the drinks, you know, and it's not a question like, it's very nice. Civilized, I call it. That's why I describe Greece as a very civilized place, for that reason. Somebody said to me the other day, Don's the biggest anarchist of all. But, you know, I don't consider myself, and I'm not really I've never voted in my life. I'm not political. But I think the truth is important, you see. And I think if you live in nature, you come closer to the truth. Of course I love Greece for giving me that. Plus I identified with all not only the landscape, with all the Greeks. The language came to me. I don't speak it so well, but it came to me from here. And the Greeks know me this way. Totally free society. That's all part of it. Greek democracy, and the Greeks. This is democracy to the Greeks. That you're not pressured. You see. So this is their problem with the EU. That the EU puts a lot of pressure on them. It's the nearest. You know about democracy elsewhere, but when you came to Greece, then you was living in another. This was something you'd never experienced before. It was amazing, and it was all natural. You know, there was no police bothering you. There was no cops. You know, they were there, but they were drinking at the table with you. A few of them, And so it wasn't a drug scene or anything like that, but you could if you wanted. But I think you have to occupy yourself in a way which you want to do. Like if you just, unless you're good at walking around and doing nothing, but you've got your camera, you've got your, so you have got something. You know, this is very important that people that come here and don't use their, because you're free to use your, what's it, that little bit of writing I read you. And when I see people not doing that, I get a lot of people come here just because of, they know something here, but they can't take advantage of it. They don't know how to use it. So they bring all this shit with them. And just hearing them talk is a intrusion on the nature of being, you know. The least they can do is go in, just be quiet and listen, or just listen to the birds or look, you know. When the Norwegians used to come, you know, the way they drank, it was crazy, because they seemed to drink themselves to 3 days of solid, you know, falling down helpless, and then they even out a little bit, you know. So I suppose they're trying to let things, there's a pressure on them that, you know, same with drug taking. You don't need that here, nothing like that, you see. But people did it and came and, you know. Is there something special here in the land? I don't say it's any more special than any other land. I just think Greece is the beginning and the end of the Western world, as I've said many times. Even today. Even when the so-called pressures are put on little Greece, and, you know, and somebody like Tsipras gets selected, and he says to Mrs. Merkel, now Mrs. Merkel, we have to speak the language of truth, and she doesn't know what he's fucking talking about. This is the amazing thing. He wasn't laying the heavies on her. He goes to the Brussels conferences, and he's not wearing a tie, and you've got David Cameron and all those people looking at him. He's the Prime Minister. How can he be the Prime Minister? Because he's just a little guy, you know, on a little moped, and, you know, and he's not playing any game. I mean, when I was first here all those years ago, I was a younger guy. I had all these people who was living like that. And also it was fascinating for me. I didn't throw myself into them, I kept to myself. But I knew that there was a painter over there working. I knew there was a sculptor down there working. And not working just to get the money for it, working because he had to create. And so this was to see them. Okay, they drank a bit. Did they keep themselves healthy? Because I think health is important. If you live in a beautiful place, you don't want to die too quickly, you know what I mean? And you've got to go up steps here, you know, you need your body here. It's very important. I'm not just talking from my head. I'm not a head man. I'm trying head and body, you know. It's in a place like that, the landscape. Lawrence Durrell said the Greek landscape, it will break your heart. It can break your heart. Because it's not an easy landscape, you know. They can come here and say it's beautiful, and while they're doing that, they fall over a rock and break their leg or something, you see. So you've got to, you know, learn from the animals, if you like, around you. You see, with me, I'd been around the world before. I'd come to the destination after that, which was amazing. And I was still young, about 27, 26, 27. So that was amazing, and being healthy, and I've had a wonderful life, amazing life. But it has been Robinson not quite crucified, but I don't say that in a sad way. If you survive, you know, everything's beautiful.
It's sad. It's sad that we live in such a world.
Yeah, well, what's fascinating with Don is that he sort of nurses. He feeds of this, you know.
He what?
He feeds of this. I mean, he drinks this shit, and it sort of makes him stronger, I think. And I wouldn't call it hatred, you know, but he gets real upset, and the upsetness is real. It's really real, you know, towards all this.
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily all American crap, but the money crap. You know? He wants to be free. Freedom for Don Lowe is, you know, freedom from money. And that's why he's here, really.
Well, that's a point of view. I think it's a little cynical, but there's truth to it. No, I think if you were a Beatles fan, money can't buy you love, and
But it can, baby, if you got enough of it.
I don't know about that. Not real love, not the real thing.
All right. All right then. Well, I think that more or less wraps it up.
Does that wrap it up?
Ah,
You don't want to sing? Let's do another chorus of Summertime.
not summertime. We can do something else. Huh?
Oh, really?
What was the other song that you sang with Johnny Mitchell? Which wasn't summertime. It was.
I think it was The House of the Rising Sun.
There it is.
There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and I, dear Lord, am one. My mother was a tree. She sewed my new blue jeans. My father was a gambling man down in New Orleans. It's about the verse I remember. If you go down to New Orleans, you're liable to find somebody who's gonna be mean, but you also might find an angel there. Just don't go to the house of the rising sun. Just don't go to that house of the rising sun. Just don't go down, baby, to that house of the rising sun.
Alright, man. The alternative version.
I'm not a filmmaker, but I would approach it with the same passion as I do my writing. I'm okay, I don't know the mechanics of it, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be with a master who can show me that. I think the camera can say so much more than don't need words, not really. And that's the amazing thing, I'm a word man, but I could, if I got behind the camera and I knew I went into it, and I think like anything, it would talk to me without words. I would be able to say what I'm thinking without words, show it through pictures. All the contacts I've had with publishers have been zero contacts. They've been speaking another language. They're not even, we need more artists in publishing, I think. If they were more the artists, right? This I don't know what they are, whether they're controlled or whether they're just businessmen or whether I don't want them to lose any money. I'm gentle like that. I don't want them to throw their money away. But, I've got 100 books. I've lived a life and I don't want to promote myself. It's their loss. That's what I see. You know what I mean? It's the same with anyone who's working in art and they're not going all the way. They're playing and they're getting lots of money for it. This is Hollywood and America, you could say. They're getting all the money for it. But they're not fulfilled as they should be, And yet you get them talking on art shows and everything on the radio, and that, to me, they're not that. Come on. The idea is that if you read something, no matter who you are, it stays in your head, you see. If all those things stay in that computer and you press your button and you do all that, what do you think stays in you? everything. This is what we are. I get sad letters from people who are stuck in the system, and they've got, and they give up. Basically, I've not given up, you see, and life is beautiful. Paradise is here and now, yeah, and don't give up.
He has a favorite writer that he has talked about a lot, and his name is Merton. I think Merton is a monk, but a Christian monk, not a Buddhist monk. And he refers to his writing a lot. And for the last 40 years, I have been in contact with Don with the old-fashioned mail. I call it snail mail. You have to write it, you have to put it in an envelope, you have to buy a stamp, you have to put it in the box, and it takes a while before he gets it. And I can imagine him, because when he's down on the port to buy his bread and pick up his newspaper and pick up his mail, he sits right at the edge of the quay outside that restaurant that we in the olden days used to call the poison pit. It's not a poison pit anymore. He sits right on the edge with his basket, with his bread, and he reads his newspaper, and I can see him opening up my letters. And I love that. He's the last and only friend I have on Hydra who writes letters.